It's time for another edition of Dome and Domer.
Hello again, Irish fans. Welcome to Dome and Domer, the oldest ND sports podcast on the planet. If you came looking for expert analysis on Notre Dame football, this may not be the podcast for you. But if you want to hear what some passionate ND alums are thinking about the Irish, stick around for the next 20 minutes. If you enjoy these conversations, be sure to like and subscribe to Dome and Domer wherever you get your favorite podcasts. I'm your host, Mike Sullivan. I'm a 1990 ND grad, and joining me is my Dillon Hall roommate and 1990 classmate, Mike Brammer, and from the class of 1991, Mike Coffey, one of the site administrators on ND Nation. If you want to learn more about Dome and Domer, visit our website at domeanddomer.com. Okay, we're going to take about 20 minutes today. Let's start with college football more generally, and let's look at some games with CFP implications. Some pretty interesting games out there this week with ranked teams who are 3-0 facing 3-0. So a big one here in the Midwest, and for a lot of Notre Dame fans, IU, Illinois, both come in at 3-0. And, IU caught a lot of flack for not being playoff worthy last year with their great record. Illinois had a great season, rising. These are potentially two college football playoff candidates. And I think the loser begins to maybe slide down the Big Ten standings. From my point of view, and maybe Notre Dame's point of view, I want to see chaos, right? So I don't really care who wins this game. I want to see chaos in the Big Ten. What do you guys think about this matchup?
Well, I think Indiana is getting more flack for the fact that they didn't play anybody in the offseason, or in the non-conference. Their non-conference schedule was completely cupcake ridden. I don't know if Illinois was that much better, but Indiana really got called out by the national media by basically scheduling themselves to this current undefeated record. So I'd be more likely to see a more battle-tested Illinois team come out on top.
Yeah, I think Illinois is for real. I think a lot of people kind of just assume that they're not because we've never heard about them. But that program, as you said, is on the rise. And I think that's going to be a great game, but I kind of expect Illinois to come out on top.
So two other games, again, sort of middling conference teams, Texas Tech and Utah in the Big 12, Auburn, Oklahoma, and the SEC. And again, I don't have a rooting interest here. I just want to see the loser of these games continue to lose, right? Actually, I'd love to see them each with 3 losses or something like that. Again, I'm looking ahead and thinking, how does 10-2 Notre Dame have a path forward? And I think it's that these kinds of games and these kinds of teams don't have an IU Cinderella kind of season, but there's a lot of, they beat each other up throughout the year.
Well, I still can't get used to Auburn and Oklahoma being an SEC game. And I saw it on the schedule. I thought, wow, that's really aggressive non-conference schedule, until I remembered, no, wait, they're both SEC teams now. Again, I think Oklahoma's had the tougher schedule so far. They certainly did a job on Michigan, and I don't see Hugh Freeze's team beating them.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think Oklahoma's good. I did watch that game. I thought they looked really good. They've got talent all around, so I think expect to see them pull out.
So, and then as far as Texas Tech and Utah, I'm like,
yeah,
I have no idea.
Yeah, right. Again, I could care less. I just want to see the aftermath of this being chaos, more or less, right? Okay, so a few interesting games with opponents on the Notre Dame schedule for upcoming opponent Arkansas. Arkansas has Memphis. They're on the road at Memphis. Memphis is 3-0. I think this might be a interesting indicator of how tough that Arkansas is going to be for us. If they go in and really handle Memphis, I would say that may suggest Arkansas has got a pretty good squad. If they struggle with Memphis, then, maybe Arkansas is what people thought they'd be, a middling kind of team. The other game of note, Miami, still undefeated, ranked in the top 5, taking on a Florida team that obviously has struggled so far this year. Bram, being in South Florida, let's start with you. What are your thoughts on Miami and Florida?
Well, that game's a rivalry game, right? So, anything goes. I think you got to throw everything out. I do think, though, that Miami is the better team for sure. And I just think with Carson Beck at quarterback, things will settle down. And in the second half, that's going to be the difference in the ball game. A lot of emotions ride high. These guys recruit against each other in a vicious way. I mean, there are kids ping-ponging back and forth between Miami and Florida, and that really creates an atmosphere of big emotions when the game finally arises. So, but I expect Miami to come out on top. I just think they got too much firepower in the key positions, and that'll be the difference in the game.
Yeah, as a Notre Dame rooting interest, obviously we want to see Miami continue to win. And although the dynamics are, a little different in a 12-team format than a mythical national championship or a 4-team format, we want to see Miami win. And so if you want a rooting interest, that's an easy one. I mean, it's hard to root for the Hurricanes, but that's an easy one as it relates to Notre Dame's interests. And then Mike Coffey, Arkansas, Memphis. Any thoughts on that matchup?
Well, it's a big time trap game for Arkansas. Memphis is a decent team, and the game they're hosting. Arkansas gave Ole Miss everything they wanted last week, and they were driving for a potential win when they fumbled the ball away. So it kind of makes me nervous. I agree with you. I think this will really show what kind of a team Arkansas is. But again, if they're looking ahead to us, Memphis could easily reach out and smack them, but still leave Arkansas more than ready for the Irish next week.
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me if Memphis wins. If Arkansas handles Memphis easily, that to me is going to maybe bode well, not so well for our matchup the following week. A couple other games of note: USC and Michigan State, both teams 3-0. We need SC to come in here undefeated to help our strength of schedule, of course. And North Carolina State and Duke, and NC State looks to remain undefeated against Duke. So I'm looking for NC State to win that one. Okay, so let's move in. Lastly, Boise State, Air Force. Again, Boise State, bad loss week 1 to South Florida. They're sit at 1-1. I think we're going to need Boise State to get some wins behind them, and they got a 1-1 matchup against Air Force. Okay, let's move on to the Irish now. Here we sit, 0-2. What does this say about the program, where we're at right now? Is this 1978, defending national champs, Notre Dame, Dan Devine's 4th season? We start out 0-2. Win 8 straight and lose a heartbreaker to SC in the Coliseum. Finish the season with the chicken soup game in the Cotton Bowl, right? Is this 1986? Lou Holtz's first team. Team played well, couldn't quite ever finish 5-6. Of course, taking over first year for Jerry Faust, some dynamics at play there. God forbid, is this 2007? Charlie Weiss's 3rd year, and the program craters to a 3-9 record. Maybe it's something different. What do you guys think? Bram, let's start with you. Where are we at as a program right now, sitting 0-2?
Well, I think it's a different dynamic in a world that we live in now with college football. So it's really hard to look back on the history and project this particular team just because of the environment of NIL and transfer and all that stuff, because it's just a different world. However, having said all that, the key for me, and has always been, and I know, Sully, you don't listen to Dome and Domer in the past, but had you been a listener, you would know that the 3rd game is when you know what you have. So we're going to know who Notre Dame is.
I'll make a note of that. Thanks, Bram.
Yeah, there you go.
Nice.
This is after the Purdue game, we know who we are. We know what we got, and we're going to know what kind of football team we have. And that's going to say everything about going into that Arkansas game. I, for one, believe that this is a just totally different dynamic of an 0-2 football team. This is a very good team. I think there's a ton of potential here. I could easily see us running the table, but I could also see us being 9-3 at the end of the season.
As I said at the beginning of our kickoff show for the year, I'd be disappointed. I mean, honestly, 9-3 would feel like a huge disappointment. I do think we're going to right the ship, but ultimately, I'm going to be disappointed if we're 9-3. Mike Coffey, where do you place this start? Is there a historical context to the start that resonates with you a little bit, or to Brammer's point, hey, it's a whole new world out there, and so comparisons have very limited value?
Well, I don't think it's 2007. 2007 was the recruiting incompetence of Tyrone Willingham come home to roost, and that does, as Rammer mentioned, it's like with the transfer portal and all that, and the ability to kind of smooth holes over. I don't think it's that. There's too much talent on this team to completely crater out. Now, what it might be is 1990, which is where you have a very talented Notre Dame team that underperforms because its defense doesn't necessarily match up with its talent level. And thanks to periodic brain farts, the team underachieves overall. Now, it might be that. I think
that's a really interesting comparison. I'm
point.
glad you brought that up. Just to remind people real quick of that season, we lost twice at home as the number one team in the country, right? You want to talk about disappointment and heartbreak, and the Stanford game that year with a couple fumbled punts, if I recall correctly. The Penn State game that year, Rocket gets hurt, offense disappears. We were number one in the country twice and lost at home. So, but I digress.
Well, and that Stanford game was also the first loss of my career as a Notre Dame student. I was undefeated up until that point. So, want to talk disappointment? You're absolutely right. But I think I also agree with Bram when he said, I mean, we're going to know what we have after this game, because this is not the Purdue team of last year. This team has actually got decent coaching. I mean, they certainly performed well against Southern Cal last week. I mean, they scored a decent number of points, and that game never got away from them. Whereas last year, it may have ended up being like a 66 to virtually nothing game like our game was. So I think this will be a little bit more of a test. We have to see something on the defensive side. And I think Purdue's offense is good enough that if the defense doesn't improve, they may not win the game, but they're going to, put some points on the board, which is something I would really rather not see.
Yeah. Again, I agree with you. Kind of an early 90s assessment here. It feels a little bit like that. It feels a little bit like the first couple Freeman years, where early season, devastating losses early in the year, and you think, okay, where's this headed? They did right the ship. I believe that that's going to happen again. I don't think it's nothing ailing us that a little vitamin W is not going to cure. I do think, you've got to win, obviously, but for the psyche, and we're going to talk about that here more in a moment, I disagree that we're going to know what we have. To me, that Arkansas game will be a real indicator. I mean, I believe we're going to beat Purdue because we're more talented, we're a better team, we're a better program. The Arkansas game, to me, might truly be the barometer about which direction the rest of the season goes. But we'll worry about that one next week. Okay, let's move into some predictions for the game, and we're going to start with our weekly feature, Pick Six. We're going to go through 6 predictions for the game about how the game will unfold or things we'd like to see that will lead to an Irish victory. And Bram, you're going to kick us off with our Pick Six.
Yeah, I'll just preface this with, this is more leaning heavily towards what I'd like to see. I don't think this is necessary for us to win the football game, but just from the standpoint of where this team is at, I think they need to rush for 200 yards or more. I just think that this is a game that you need to control and dominate. We're the better team. We've got the better athletes. I think arguably we're the better coach team, and this game is at home. So you've got to assert yourselves here. And I think having accumulated 200 yards in rushing offense is going to put us where we need to be moving through the rest of the schedule. And so for me, that's what I'd love to see. We don't need 200 to win the game, but I think that's gonna be huge for this team if we can do that.
Yeah, 100% agree on that. You playing at home. Just a quick thought. I really hope the crowd doesn't have a little bit of a hangover from last week's disappointment. We're going to need a home field advantage. The guys are going to need that energy, and I hope we see that. Mike Coffey, any thoughts on the rushing? What a healthy rushing production means for the team?
I think, given how Purdue's defense has played this year, and going back to what's the barometer for this team, I think without a healthy rushing performance on Saturday, we need to see that not only can they achieve against a defense that they should be able to run on, but also that the coaches have not abandoned any kind of a running plan, which they're going to need over the course of the year. So I would agree with Mike. We've got to see quality there, or else we're in trouble.
So last week we said, hey, I want to see 24 combined carries with the running backs. They were at something like 35. There was a commitment to run the ball last week. I expect we're going to see that again. And yeah, I'm with you, Bram. It's going to be good for my psyche. I don't care, whatever for the team. I need us to rush for 200 yards or more, or I'm going to start having some issues. Okay, my first pick six, the second pick six for the show. I'm going to say CJ Carr is going to have no turnovers. Now, to me, this is really speaks to the continued growth and development that I want to see, that I expect to see. He's looked good through 2 games. He showed that he can make a lot of the throws that you need him to make to be successful. And we talked about vertical passing last week. We got a little bit of that. I just want to see no turnovers, and the 2 picks that he's thrown, the carelessness with the clap on the snap. I want to see that get cleaned up a little bit.
I definitely would agree with that. And also the run pass tell that apparently A&M picked up on. I mean, just the overall quarterback play has been good. And I think Carr's attitude is fantastic. We've talked about that before. But yeah, if we can see an example of truly cleaned up quarterback play, including no turnovers, that's important.
Yeah, that's a huge progression point for him, and I think he's capable of it. I think just just in the first or second game, some of the improvement we saw out of him. But I like his demeanor. I just really think that he seems like he's in control. He's kind of got that Brady Quinn. Brady as a young player seemed like he had it right from the get-go, and Carr seems to be of that same mindset. He just seems like he's confident out there, and I expect him to continue to grow throughout this season.
I love what the coaches said this week. The mental part of the game, he seems to be a real student of the game, knows if he's made a mistake, he knows what the mistake is and what he should have done. It's not something that is overwhelming him and he's lost, according to what the coaches are saying to the media. And they seem to be on the same page. And so all that should translate to cleaner performance. And I hope we see the results of that in no turnovers. Okay, Bram, how about pick six, number 3 for you?
Yeah. Well, number 2 would be that the defensive line is going to have 2 sacks. Now, again, this is leaning more on what I'd like to see, whether we need it or not to win the football game. But I tell you what, for as much hype as we've heard over the defensive line and preseason and where we're at, for them to walk away with this game then with less than 2 sacks, and I don't mean 2 sacks as a team, I mean the D line getting 2 sacks. So I'd like to see that. I think that would be a great staple moving forward. And it'd be much needed for us and the confidence on the defensive side of the ball.
Yeah, Marcus Freeman was asked a little bit about some of the personnel on the defensive line. Logan Thomas hasn't played much, might be ready to start contributing more. Joshua Burnham, same thing, been hampered a little bit by injuries. 2 guys that in the preseason, I think we all expected to contribute to a dominant pass rush. So, hopeful that they're getting more reps, they're getting more snaps on Saturday, and they contribute to that. Now, I think you are right that we will have that. Purdue is 79th in sacks allowed, and it's not like they've played a great schedule. So there might be an opportunity there, and I'm with you. We need to see it. Mike Coffey, anything on that topic?
No, I definitely agree with that, but I'm starting to drift into the edge organic. I need to see it first school because I've watched 2 games, granted against good teams, and the defense hasn't performed. I completely agree that if with 2 sacks against this, a minimum of 2 sacks against this team is what we should see.
But again, he's talking about just from the down, the 4 guys with their hands on the ground, right?
Just from the 4 linemen, absolutely.
Right.
That's what we should see.
I think that
if we don't see it,
it's a little bit misleading in that if those guys are playing well, executing their assignments, being physical, that actually might free up a sack for one of the linebackers or somebody else that you're bringing from the next level, right? So sometimes a defensive lineman can do everything right and create a great pass rush and not get the sack. So just keep your eye on that. I want to see them be more productive,
you're right about
if it doesn't
that,
result in the stats.
I think it's going to be from the edge. So I'm just, if the edge guys are as good as advertised, then I think they should be able to get that. And I'd like to see that. That's why I think it's going to come from the D line. But you're absolutely right. we could end up with 6 sacks, and the D line gets one of them. And you know what? That's a great defensive day.
You bet.
But I
You
just
bet.
think for our own psyche and where this team's at, we need the D line to show up Saturday and
I agree with
record
you.
something.
And I'm going to take my next pick six in a slightly different direction, but related to the defense overall and the defensive line. I'm going to say that we need to see 5 tackles for a loss. Now, Purdue ranks 108th in rushing offense and 118th in tackles for loss allowed. All that says to me that if we don't see that kind of disruption and havoc, okay, that will be a very bad indicator. I think we will get healthy in these areas. I think we will have production in these areas. Although, Mike Coffey, you're right, Purdue's better, right? I mean, they were a dumpster fire last year. They're better. We're still a much better team, and I think we're going to see it in these categories.
Yeah, but much better than last year is kind of a low bar for comparison there. I mean, Purdue was absolutely god awful last year. Having said that, the stats say what they say, and if we can't replicate the kind of performance of lower echelon teams against these guys, especially playing at home, that might be problematic going forward.
For sure. Okay, Bram, what's next on your list?
Well, I think there's a theme development here, but it's also on the defensive side of the ball. And that would be that I really think, again, for the psyche of this football team and where the defense is at, they need to put up less than or give up less than 250 yards in the air. I think if Purdue walks out of that stadium with more than 250 yards, it's going to be another scratch your head moment for us. And that's going to be bad for us moving forward, because it certainly isn't going to instill confidence that we can handle the teams on the rest of our schedule if we give up more than 250 to Purdue. So I'm going to put that the barrier. I think that's an achievable one, but to me, that would be an indicator of a pretty bad day if we give up more than 250.
Yeah, I can't argue with that. Purdue, from the offensive side of things, Purdue's a better passing team than rushing team. They're ranked 31st in pass offense at 271 yards passing per game, right? So they have some capability. A lot of new guys on the roster. They got some speedy receivers, et cetera, et cetera. But I agree with you. You're right. I think holding them below their season average would be a good indication. And yeah, I'm with you on that one. Mike Coffey.
You're all right with that, Coffee? You look like you were screaming. You had that smirk on your face. I'm not saying that we need that to win. I'm just saying it would be a good thing for the team.
Oh, no, absolutely. It would be a fantastic thing. The two things that give me pause are, number one, as I said, this is going to require a level of performance from our defensive backfield that we know they're capable of. We just haven't seen it yet. And this would be a very good time for it to show up. I also think that if Notre Dame gets as far ahead as we would guess they probably will, I would imagine the entire second half is going to be Purdue throwing the ball around. So it may end up being,
could be garbage. Yeah.
Let's say it's like 280, 290 yards, but if that's coupled with like 60 yards on the ground, that's certainly, I would say anything under 300 yards of total offense would absolutely thrill me to death.
For sure. And I think that's where passing efficiency comes into it. So let's say they throw for 290, but we have 4 sacks and 2 picks or whatever, right? And a bunch of hurries. Mm-hmm. Okay, that's fine. Pass efficiency defense is the better metric, right? So sure. I think, we need to see better performance overall by the defense, and especially, all 3 levels of the defense, let's be honest. Now, the defense is going to be a little in the secondary. Don Schuler sitting out the first half for that bogus targeting call. We don't know Leonard Moore's status, still listed as questionable. Should have Devonta Smith back, as all indications are that he might be questionable, but some expectations that he's healing. So it's going to be really interesting to see the personnel and who's rotated in there and at what positions in the secondary. All right, my last pick 6. Got to throw something for the special teams in there, and I think the special teams will contribute in a meaningful way. But it wouldn't surprise me if our place kicking unit struggles. Because, again, Noah Burnett nursing an injury, questionable. There's an open competition this week per Marcus Freeman's presser today. So I do expect we're going to see an advantage in field position through our special teams, ideally a scorer, setting up a scorer, but it wouldn't surprise me if place kicking is problematic.
No, that definitely is, because, kickers can be very dependent on staying healthy. I mean, just the way they move, the way they have to make sure the kicks are aimed properly and stuff like that. So it would be a shame if our place kicking had a negative effect on the game. I certainly would hope for something. It's been surprising so far. I mean, we came into the season with Owen saying, well, we don't know about the kicker and all that. And so far it's been fantastic. So knock wood, that luck continues, and except for obviously that bad point after before.
So we don't have to go back to that. So if any of these other items in our pick six list work out the way we hope and think, it's not going to come down to place kicking, right? No. If it comes down to place kicking, it's because we didn't really get the job done in some of those other places. So, okay, Bram, any thoughts on special teams before we move on to predicting the score?
The one thing that would be a little bit of a concern is that the tendency for Marcus Freeman to decide to go for it on fourth down instead of place the kick, because he's got somebody that's either A, not 100%, or B, he's got a backup kicker in there. And then all of a sudden, Purdue comes up with this huge stop. That's the kind of stuff that that's the negative impact to the game that Coffey's talking about. And I think it's even impacted by that. It's the decisions to go for it on fourth down because you don't feel 100% confident in what you got. And that has an impact on the game if all of a sudden that comes up with nothing. And so that'll be something to be interesting. But like we said, if we get the things that we're talking about, the pick six, I don't even think that's going to matter. So we'll see.
I think that's a great point. The 4-down territory might be, a little wider, a little deeper, closer to midfield than we otherwise would see it. So we'll obviously got to keep an eye on that. Okay, final scores. Mike Coffey, give me a number.
Well, I usually make my pick at the beginning of the week when I open up the contest.
This sounds like an excuse already.
I picked us to win 45-27.
Okay, I like it.
I'm kind of waffling a little bit, not on the Purdue score, but on our score. But having given it some prayerful meditation, I'm going to stick with that. 45-27 Irish win.
All right, Brammer.
Yeah, he was right on to where I was going. I'm 45-22. But I even think that's going to be a garbage score for Purdue in the fourth quarter. So I think that last touchdown will be scored by Purdue in garbage time. But I think 45-22 is where it's going to be at.
Okay, I think we're close. I had 41-20 is what I'm expecting to see. Irish will get it done. Again, big, healthy dose of vitamin W, and all things will be well for a few days anyway. All right, we're going to wrap it up there. For Mike Brammer and Mike Coffey, I'm Mike Sullivan. We'll see you next time on Dome and Domer.